For TRICHOMES.com, I'm Jesse Betend, and this is The High Ground. On this show, we feature leaders of the cannabis industry. We talk to everyone from farmers to CEOs and public officials, anyone making an impact on the cannabis community and beyond. Earlier this year, Brooke Eagle of Pacific Reserve came on the TRICHOMES Hash It Out podcast. This was back in March, and he was asked a lot about coronavirus and how it was impacting the industry. At the time, everyone was expecting this to maybe last 1-2 months at most. So we figured we'd check back in with Brooke almost 1 year later. We talk about how taxes in California are shaping the industry in unexpected ways, and how while sales have stayed consistent, coronavirus might be changing the way that people consume cannabis, perhaps even beyond the pandemic. Brooke, first of all, I just want to say thank you for coming back on the show. I'm using my familiar voice, even though we've never talked before, because you, of course, came on another TRICHOMES production all the way back, I think, in March at the beginning of the pandemic. Yeah. So I think like the first most obvious question is, did you expect at that time for us to be where we're at right now? And like thinking back to that interview, what were your expectations versus where we are?
That's a good question. Good to be back on, Jesse. It's good to talk to you. By the way, too. Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Yeah, I mean, this whole pandemic, I think, for everybody's just something strange and something I don't think anybody was really thinking about experiencing in their lifetime. But here we are. I'm just feel grateful that cannabis is essential, which we talked a lot about in March. And that was definitely, I think, a big milestone in cannabis. Where all of a sudden we're essential, where before we were criminals pretty quickly. So that being said, it's been good to keep our employees working, keep our business going. In the market trends of COVID, I think it's been overall pretty steady. And, especially when people are getting their stimuluses, I think actually like sales were going up in stores. You remember all that in March. Yeah. I think now we're a little bit more used to it. Here at the farm, we have such protocols in place. It's allowed us to keep working and, people stay home now a lot easier, where any sign of any sickness now or like a runny nose or anything, like you have to stay home here. So it's kept everyone safe that way. Just the employees getting used to that. And of course, employees want to be as safe as possible. Well, so it's kind of just a thing here in our business where everybody's looking out for each other's best interests, and it's kept everyone, healthy.
Yeah. And so a lot has been said about cannabis being essential, but I want to touch on it just because it sounds like you were kind of saying something a little bit different, which is it fair to say that that is not only an important milestone just in terms of what the industry means, like the legal ability to continue operating in the midst of the pandemic is crucially important, obviously, for operations. But are you saying that there was also kind of like a legitimizing aspect to being deemed essential, going from being an illegal thing?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it put us in the same category as other agricultural businesses, which recognize that if you're growing a plant, if you're not there to water it, it is going to die. So it's essential that people have to be there to take care of your plants, and it also put us in the same categories as healthcare workers and all of these kind of first responders and these businesses that are essential to everyone's day-to-day lives. So twofold, it shows cannabis important. I think also it's a medicine that people use, even though it's recreational, people still are buying it for medicinal reasons. So I think it puts a little validity that way to it on a mainstream level. It brings us on the same plateau as just everyday businesses, which in, my 25 years of being in the cannabis industry is something I wasn't, it's always something I always wanted, but I wasn't sure if it was always going to be there, even with it going legal. So it's really cool to see that across the nation and across the world, it's growing at such a rapid pace that, we're only, I don't think we're very far away from seeing it, federally legal here at the States, and then it just compounding worldwide to be just another accepted herb that people use in their life.
And, I know that everybody's view on this is a little bit impacted by where they are in the country. I'm in Illinois, so we're now nearing. No, we've just completed our first full year of legal cannabis because it's Happy New Year. But you know, at the beginning of the year, I don't think that I had that perception. So it feels like a lot has happened very quickly, and COVID definitely does play into that. And we'll talk a lot about COVID throughout this interview, but for people who maybe didn't listen to that first interview, don't know much about Pacific Reserve, let's talk a little bit about your story. My understanding is that this was kind of the beginning of this is three partners, three buddies who kind of were working on similar things. You guys bootstrapped the organization. It's not like what not to do, but it almost sounds like, you know, starting a cannabis business on hard mode or something like that. Talk a little bit about, you know, starting out, and do you think you would do it the same given what you know now?
I mean, well, looking back, there's always maybe things you could have done different, but I feel really proud of everything we've done. And yeah, I mean, kind of what you're alluding to is we didn't take any super huge investments. We took a minimal investment from an investor partner, and three of us. One of my partners I've known for a very long time. We met our third partner, Andy, through the cannabis kind of community. And when licensing and recreational was just about to go into effect, we all came together and started this project here in Salinas, where our farm is located currently. And yeah, over the past years, we've just been putting everything back, our time, our funds, everything into growing this business. And yeah, we just, we keep growing and growing. We launched a brand, Pacific Reserve, where we do, flower pre-rolls, infused pre-rolls. And last year, since we talked to you, we expanded, and now we're doing gummies, and we're also making concentrates. And we have a lot more products coming out this year too that we're working on. So I'm real excited about that. Yeah. And so we've just kind of done this our way. We didn't go the corporate way, I guess, which sometimes you think maybe been easier because having access to a lot of money definitely makes things happen faster and good. But we built this the way we wanted to build our business. And, we're people that have been in the cannabis industry for our whole lives. And this plant has taken care of us. And we love, this plant. We love this business. And we just wanted to do things how we would want a brand to be out there to be. And we definitely are, not a boutique brand in the sense, we're growing acres and acres of flower. We're trying to grow it as high end as possible. And yeah, I can get into kind of where we expanded since our last talk, if you want to get into that now.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess the first question that I kind of wanted to follow up was talk a little bit about that situation financially as much as you can. What does it mean for the business that you guys don't have sort of a large controlling interest because of...
the main thing is you have to make smart decisions. There's no room for error. Like taking a big hit, that's, we don't have a huge buffer zone, right? Where some of these big corporations do. So the three of us make quick decisions, and we make really smart decisions so we can pivot fast. We have to go up a tons of chain of command to make changes in our operations or facilities. And that's allowed us to just stay afloat. And, in the cannabis industry, it's not just some big ramp going straight up. I mean, these are hills in the market. So some months stores aren't buying as much because not as many patients are going in. And it seems to be this ripple effect throughout the whole state. We're in a giant country here in California, really. And
right.
It has its own market trends, seasonally, all these different things. There's still one of the things we talked about last interview that really hasn't changed that much in the market is there isn't that many new stores. There's more and more coming online, which is great. And I think in 2021, we're going to see a lot of new stores coming into California, which it needs. I'm just hoping they spread out more throughout the state and don't be so localized. But, at the beginning of the year, there was still only I want to say 500 stores. And I think now there's somewhere around 800 with deliveries and brick and mortars. But, back in 215 days, we mentioned there was 6,000, right?
Right.
So, that's really still dictating a lot of California market is, there isn't that many stores. Luckily right now, there isn't a super glut of product. Obviously after harvest, that happens. But when there is start to be a huge glut of product, which I'm expecting next year really to happen more as more acres and acres come online, not having enough stores is going to become a bigger and bigger issue. So,
you had talked about that in 2019, both on the podcast last time, and you were interviewed in a couple of articles talking about what you were seeing, where there was just more and more acres of canopy being grown. And is my understanding correct that basically your problem was exactly that? There just weren't enough stores, places to potentially be unloading that product. And while that doesn't seem to have happened, you're saying that that's still a concern for 2021, even with all the new stores that are potentially coming online?
Yeah, because there hasn't been that many. There's only maybe 300 stores or something since the last time we talked. And, there should be at least a couple thousand in California. I would think, to meet the population, but there's not that many has come online.
And you have a pretty good view into this because part of what you do, sort of the main original part of the business, was growing clones and then selling those to companies. So you have a pretty decent sense of who's buying what and what demand looks like in some capacity, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We're a seed to sale business, so we do everything from breeding genetics to we have a nursery where in the spring and early summer planting season, we do sell clones. And then we also do just our own distribution and things like that. So throughout that process, we really get to see kind of all of the things we're talking about, everything from how many people are buying clones to how much our store's buying, right? So it gives us insight to the whole market.
And when it comes to the nursery business, I've heard you say before that part of the strategy there was basically just inspired by tax law. This idea that you paid a lot less taxes on plants before they were a certain size, if I understand correctly.
Yeah.
Tell me a little more about that.
Yeah, in Monterey County, it's a square footage tax. So in some counties, it's just a percentage of gross, right? Here in Monterey County, it's by square footage. And when we first got our licenses, being not a very, with a small investment, it was a lot smarter for us during build out, which you still have to pay taxes here, even if you're building out in a canopy and not growing under it. So, just another cannabis extra taxation kind of thing. So the smartest thing for us to do was to do a nursery when we first started, because the taxes on that were considerably less than flowering canopy.
It was like $15.
Yeah, it was $15 to start in Monterey County. It has dropped down to $5.
Whoa. Okay, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, and the nursery tax has always been $2 a square foot. So, huge difference when we're starting off, though. And so that was just a financial decision at the beginning, where we had to go with the cheapest business to start, and it was seasonal because we couldn't afford a flowering canopy with those licenses while we were still building out. It just didn't make sense. If you're not flowering in it, why would you be paying taxes on it? So, it kind of worked out that way. And it also allowed us to just understand the facilities without having to risk giant crops at first. And then the taxes dropped pretty quickly in Monterey County. There was a lot of pushback against that at that time. They dropped it down to $5. And as soon as that happened, we went fully into flowering canopy. So we don't really do too many nursery sales in the sense of when we first launched, we were a nursery, maybe. Now we've really pushed into flowers, and most of our nursery is just for our own needs. And then seasonally, we will sell clones.
So I guess the question that I'm kind of driving at with this is, I guess I wonder how much businesses are pushed and shaped by taxes in California, which for many different reasons are sort of a constant problem for the industry. It sounds like, the trajectory of your business was in many ways a response to the tax law at the time, and you shifted pretty quickly. But I guess I wonder how much are businesses shaped by these regulations?
I think they're majorly shaped by them. I mean, California has cultivation tax, your excise taxes at the retail level, and then in the county level, everybody has their own different county taxes. So, anywhere from 30 to 40% all the way through the chain is taxed. And those taxes are due monthly, and it's a huge burden. Then you have your federal taxes due every year, which I think is a lot of companies do not prepare for those. So that's also something that could really change a lot of ways your operations are working. If you're, all of a sudden rack up a huge tax bill, or you weren't prepared for one, or whatever it is. So yeah, taxes are, in cannabis is no joke, and we're more taxed than any other industry I know of. And so to survive that is really difficult, and to make profits on top of those taxes is even more difficult. So, I have a feeling that as this goes more federal, the big businesses come in, we'll probably start to see those taxes disappear. Even if Newsom and the state dropped the cultivation tax right now, which is $153 per pound, that would be a game changer for everybody in the industry. That's over 10% of what people get for a pound, or more, sometimes 20%, depending on what you sell your pound for. Because that cultivation tax, if you sell your pound for $600 or you sell it for $2,600, it's still $153. So, which is no fair. Why does someone with outdoor weed have to pay, 40% of the price of their pound to the state? But that's just the law. So, things like that, and I mean, very challenging.
There is some precedent, of course, for making this change. Like dropping from 15 to 5 is a significant change. So what you're saying makes sense, that we could.
That was on the county level, changes. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the other large impact of taxes, of course, is that it fuels the illicit market, drives people to maybe make purchases outside of a dispensary. And so I guess I'm wondering, do you have any sense of how COVID has impacted sales on the illicit side? Has fear of COVID maybe turned people to the practice of buying their cannabis in a dispensary or in a store, or doing delivery or something like that instead?
I don't know.
It's hard to say, right?
Like what people are doing on that thing, but what I can speak to is on the retail side, just the numbers. Like, I thought we had a really strong year in California, and I think people, like, there's all these, I don't know if you guys posted or not, but I saw, like, during the holidays, people were smoking cannabis as much as drinking. That's pretty crazy. Yes. Like, usually, drinking's always outswamp people smoking cannabis 10-1, right? So to see that there's like the survey saying nationwide people are using cannabis more, I think it goes to speak to.
I saw that too.
Maybe you're not smoking as much cannabis if you're worried about COVID or your lungs or something, but certainly, like, I do feel cannabis it keeps you healthy too if you use it properly and you're not just abusing it. So, I think people use more cannabis due to COVID for whatever reasons. You're sitting home and you're isolating, cannabis can become a good friend. So,
well, let's just kind of a, spitball question. I wonder about your general, thoughts on this. Like, it does undeniably, casual cannabis use definitely has a social component to it traditionally. And I'm curious how that impacts sales. Like, do you see, are people doing like Zoom smoke sessions, or is there still a social component, or are people like consuming cannabis differently?
So that's a good question. I don't share joints.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think that kind of process of, rolling your own and not passing things around probably is now going to become more of a social norm, I would think, moving forward. And I think probably, a lot more people are out there getting high with just their small little pod of friends that they've been, choosing to be around during the past year, during this COVID times, or family or whatever. And so, yeah, I think the pot circle's grown smaller, of individuals. And I think, edible sales and things along those lines that aren't necessarily smoking are probably seeing a little bit more tick up as well.
Sure. And this might be a strange transition, but you mentioned that you guys are pushing into gummies and doing some extraction. What fueled the decision there? Is this like a market trend? Is this just a natural expansion of what you guys are doing?
Our slogan for our brand is "From Our Farm." And why we chose that slogan is because, we take a lot of pride that truly everything that we do comes from our farm. We don't outsource any material. We don't wholesale. So starting to use, kind of like material to make concentrates with became kind of a no-brainer as we started to have more material. And as we, our canopy is growing, it allows us to start making other products because now we have more product coming in. So we started making, it's not live resin, it's cured resin, which is dried flower, kind of batters. And they're turning out super amazing, really terpy. And they're, our whole brand motto is super high quality for really affordable prices. And I think that these concentrates fit right into that model where you're going to be hard pressed to find, concentrates at this quality for the price point. And that's kind of all across our whole brand. That's our goal is, I open up our flower, it's testing at 30%, but you're going to get it for half the price of an indoor flower testing at 30%. It's going to have the same terpenes. We're installing lights everywhere in our whole facility now. So now we have over 2.5 acres of 1,000-watt HPS lights up. And the reason we went with those is it's allowing us to have consistent quality year round, guaranteeing our customers, no matter what time of the year, winter, or if it's raining or when the sun's bright out, you're going to have indoor looking quality, flowers in our jars. And so we're really excited about that. The lights are also offering like heat to us in the winter and savings on costs and things like that. And we're expanding our whole facility to be covered in lights to really make it more of a true mixed light kind of hybrid model that people are talking about now, which is, greenhouses that are coming out with what I think is superior product. Cause I always think the sun brings something to flower that an indoor grow can never get, in flavor and terpenes and just kind of the high it produces. And so, we're really excited to bring that more stabilized across our whole line. And then we did the gummies just because, we found this amazing recipe. It's all organic, and I think they're just some of the best tasting gummies I've personally tried, and I've eaten a lot of gummies. So really just love the flavor, and we use our trim, and it gets turned into distillate, and we use that distillate. So we're using our trim to put in the distillate into these gummies. And we're all same thing. We're, really low price point, and they're super tasty. They're 10 milligrams each. And so we're just kind of going to be expanding a lot of new products into our line over the next year that kind of just have that same motto. We want people to know that you can count on our products to be consistent. They're coming from our farms, the way we grow. We're looking to get our organic certification this year, which the state of California is finally putting into action for cannabis. So if it doesn't happen this year, we'll have it dialed in by next. But, I think that's another thing that's going to set our products apart down the line is we want our cannabis to be like our food. I eat all organic food, so I want our business to be growing organic cannabis. And, we're going to be growing into an additional about 7 acres of greenhouses over the next year and a half. So we're growing rapidly. And so taking this organic model and expanding it and our lights and everything, we really want people over the next 2 years to be able to open all of our products and just find consistent quality, organic cannabis that they can just count on.
I've seen in an article your your grow house or your farm described as like cathedral like. What can you tell me a little bit about what it looks like? And now covered in all those lights, is this like a, I don't know, like a, imagine it almost like a, you know, a house on Christmas or something, just like fully lit up with all these little trees. Like,
it looks pretty cool with the lights now. When you see, you know, 1,000 lights all together, so we have 1,000 lights on one side of our greenhouse. Wow. Yeah, it's
have you ever like done a concert in there?
No. But our greenhouses though are arched, right? They're IBGs and about 20 feet up in the air. So when you go in and you look up, the roofs look really, really high, and that allows us to have more air movement and all this stuff in the greenhouses. So that's why I think it's been described as that. Definitely, you walk in, they're like, "Whoa, those roofs are really high." And
I think that's actually the first sentence of the article was like, whenever people walk in, they say "wow" or something like that.
Yeah. So our main greenhouse is it's 3-acre greenhouse, so it's a huge greenhouse. It's just a big chunk. Yeah. So it's really cool when you walk in there. It's kind of like a little. All of a sudden, you're walking like a little Garden of Eden. No matter what the temperature is outside, it's always got its ideal conditions inside. So I've asked this question before, one time before, but it's just something I'm kind of curious about. As a company, how do you go about choosing which cultivars to provide? Is this about, you know, determining certain things that people are definitely looking for? Are you trying to grow a range? Are you trying to grow things that others aren't? What's the strategy in which cultivars to choose? The primary thing we've learned is Monterey County has its very own unique growing environment, and so you have to find cultivars that grow here in Monterey County. So some genetics that do great in other parts of the state won't do that great here. They'll get mold, or they won't just be big. So then there's other strains and cultivars that, you know, will grow fantastic here, but will grow like crap somewhere else. So you just got to really wean through those first. And it's taken us a long time. This year, we've actually put together a selection of around 25 genetics that we've chosen over the past 3 years of growing out here. And all of them do super well out here. They all are, you know, we don't have any what I would consider easily found genetics. There's definitely other groups growing some of them, and there's some genetics that we are the only group that I know of growing. And so, yeah, that's the main thing though, is they have to grow well here, and it takes, you know, a long time of growing something to find out how it does year round out here. And then it, you know, for us, it has to have flavor, it has to have potency. We try to have fruity strains, gassy strains, purple strains. Yeah. And we're more, you know, sativas as well as indicas. So we really want to provide a whole gamut for our consumers and our clients that we work with, just so we have a little bit of anything. And I like to switch up the flower I'm smoking all the time. I'm not someone that will just smoke one thing for a long time. And I think that's the way most cannabis smokers are. You'll find strains that you really like too, but you always want to try something new. So we switch our genetics up every few months.
That's actually really interesting because I totally agree that it seems like most people switch, but it does seem like most people who consume a lot of cannabis, especially for medicinal reasons, will have like a story about one experience where they were like, this was the perfect thing. And every time I tried it, it was perfect over and over and over. And now I can never find it again. Do you think that habits will change as people are able to find certain things slightly more regularly over time?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think just like people find certain types of beer they like and they go to a lot, they'll do the same with cannabis. You know, or maybe every month, you know, you're smoking a little of this strain, but then you're going to get a couple of these other strains just to try out. Or, you know, just the way you're feeling. Some strains make you feel really, really stoned, and some, you know, get you in your head, some get you in your body, some just make you feel really sleepy and relaxed. You know, the whole thing where that down in LA, like OG Kushes and Indicas are way more popular than up in NorCal, where actually people will lean more towards hybrids and sativas. I think that's because LA is so hustle and bustle and people are grinding out there in these huge cities. They want to go home and just chill, you know, or like when they're out and about, they want to chill. And I think that makes sense. Like, yeah, they're going to lean towards indicas. In NorCal, people are up in the woods. They're a little bit more spread out. You know, like people are more apt to smoke sativas and hybrids to keep them energized. So not that everyone doesn't smoke everything, but there is like indicas sell way more down in LA. That's always been
really interesting.
Yeah.
That's really, really interesting.
So,
I think you're onto something there too. And I mean, you know, not to mention what other things people might be doing, but I think like the last question for you, and I've held off on asking it because like I'm going to get this word so wrong. My French father's rolling over in his proverbial grave. But one of the news stories that kind of got swept under a lot of other big things in this big year, but I think is pretty notable was I believe Humboldt County had some legislation, and it may also apply to other areas as well, creating a terroir program, which is basically similar to wine, an acknowledgement that the location where cannabis is grown has a great impact on its phenotype and what you find there. That seems like a really legitimizing step for the industry in a similar way to perhaps being considered an essential service. Just you know, a lot has been made of the inability to copyright or you know, like create because it's a plant, but your location, the strains that grow wonderfully, as you say, you know, in your part of California, of the state versus another part of the state, these things can become sought after. And so I wonder just how you think about that and what it means for the industry. Yeah, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that was a great move I think it was really spurred on by the people of Humboldt, and it was led to Newsom to pass that. And I think it just makes total sense. And, you know, there's certain even areas in Humboldt that just have different microclimates and a different type of flower comes out of there. Everyone knows from people that have friends growing up there, or whatever, that every little farm in Mendocino and Humboldt, their flower all has their uniqueness to it. And that's the beauty of those farms. And so I think to get the recognition of like, hey, I can finally put this on my label. And as cannabis goes worldwide and who knows where, it's going to allow, just like in France and those things, where all of a sudden these areas have more value to their grapes, right? Or more value now to their cannabis because people around the world know it's coming from this area where they're going to get a unique terpene profile or unique, you know, high off of it. And that is true. And it can go for all sorts of different areas in California, you know, and I think it makes sense. You should have the right to allow people to know where your cannabis is coming from, you know, on the label. So I think that was a really smart move, and it can't do anything but certainly help the small farmers, which I think is great. And yeah, see where it goes in the future.
Speaking of the future, I guess my last question for you is my patented two-part, complicated, hard to answer question. But we can split them into two separate questions. I'm curious what the year coming means to you, what you're looking forward to, but also I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of speak to the industry, to consumers. If there are issues specific to California or the industry at large, is there anything that you kind of want to draw people's attention to? What can we as consumers do to help advance the industry? Yeah, just any thoughts on the coming year?
The big thing is just for people to really be like, this cultivation tax, I think, is a big thing that should be addressed this next year. Do I think California will ever let go of that tax? No. Why would they? But if they did, a lot of beneficial things would come out of it, I think, for the industry, in just the sense of giving people a little bit more bandwidth to grow and be successful and all this stuff. So that's one thing I would just, you know, I don't know if consumers really understand. I think a lot of people just have the perception that everybody in cannabis is just making like tons of money and all this stuff. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. It's a struggle out there for 99% of the businesses out there. I don't care how big or small they are. So I think for kind of the consumer level to understand like every single thing from the clone being taken all the way to the final sale when you put in your pocket, and the consumer's paying taxes too, is taxed by the state and the county that people are licensed in. So, yeah, it's a lot. And I think it's something, we'll see. You know, I know there's already a lot of people lobbying. To kind of segue into that, we're actually moving. We got a facility up in Sacramento, so we'll be moving Pacific Reserve brands up to Sacramento. Hopefully early this spring. We'll be doing all of our packaging up there, distribution, and things of that nature. And we're excited to kind of participate in the Sacramento community as well, because right there is the forefront of legislation and all that stuff in the state. And there's a lot of activity there. So, we're looking to just put our 2 cents in and support good causes and try to just help the state be, get more benefits from this cannabis industry. I mean, what did the state get, like $1 billion in taxes this year?
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. And I'm just really hoping they're doing good things with it, right? So now that this tax money is starting to roll in, there has to be oversight into that kind of stuff. Where's that money going? I don't know. Does the consumers know where that money is going? We can all chime into that, because they're taking our money as the businesses, and the state's also taking your money as a consumer. So everybody in the state has the right to know where is cannabis taxes going and all this stuff. So.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And like my own thoughts about 2021 is that I think we will see, as the federal conversation kind of heats up, some discomfort from consumers about people still being in prison or people still having cannabis arrests on their record.
Absolutely. While
states are really taking in money like hand over hand. And so that's a question. I do think that as economic development or rebuilding in states happens, cannabis is going to be an important part of that conversation, and that gives this industry power. I also worry about, in some ways, what happens when the floodgates open and larger businesses that have been, held out suddenly get in there. And so I hope to see, smaller businesses like you working together. And, I wish you guys good luck.
Consumers, and this just goes for any product. And I think people stray away from really understanding when you buy something, where is it coming from? And who do those people support? Right.
Right.
But in cannabis, you can really know who you're supporting. I mean, it's pretty easy to look up and tell who's maybe a more corporate business with CEOs that have never smoked a joint in their whole life versus a group like us that's been risking our freedoms and sacrificed a lot to be able to get to the point where we're at and legally be working with the plant and all that stuff. So, I think that's a consumer's choice at that point to support who they want to. And I really encourage everybody to get out there, and if you like a brand, look into them and make sure, you feel good about who you're supporting. Because, there's a lot of small businesses in cannabis right now. There's not tons of big ones, but that is going to change, like you're alluding to, in the next 5 years. I'm very certain of that. There's going to be a lot of businesses coming in, and that doesn't mean that those big businesses aren't good people to support either. So you just have to really do your diligence and know where you're spending your money and who you want to support. And
no, you're making a really, really great point. And I do think that's why we're in this like very strange, tricky place where I can speak specifically about Illinois, but I think that this does also apply to California, where, sometimes I think there's this perception that giving out licenses is, I don't know, in some way, maybe like enriching potentially these companies or like once a company gets a license, like, oh, okay, like they're totally set. But the reality is that in a lot of states, especially here in Illinois, there are so few businesses that are licensed and operating that it almost is a monopoly right now. So at this point, more licenses and more businesses, it's like, yeah, it's competition, but it's also just really good for the industry too, especially when these are small businesses that are up and running.
Look at all the licenses, it's all mostly big MSOs that have secured the license in the East Coast, Chicago, all those type of areas, because those are the only type players that even had the bandwidth to get those states to give licenses out.
Totally.
I mean, so the only way those states were going to give licenses, California had such a long history with cannabis, the state could trust all these small gardens to come online and get licenses, right? None of these other states have any history with cannabis. So I feel like the politicians only would trust, how are the politicians going to get paid and the states make money? Well, we're going to bring in corporate guys that have tons of money in their bank accounts, so we know we're getting paid. I mean, that's the way I looked at it at the beginning. And like you're saying, I really hope they start opening it up to second rounds of, more local people having opportunities to get in the industry. So a lot of those big MSOs, I mean, when you're that big, it's really hard to control your quality and all that stuff. And there's all sorts of different issues that pop up at that scale that I couldn't imagine dealing with. So, yeah.
As you say, I do think that cannabis consumers are people who are already have a penchant towards brand loyalty, towards supporting the businesses that they deem to be worthwhile. And, they're a lively community of people who are really paying attention. So I believe and hope that, the focus on quality and organic growing and everything that you guys are doing is going to bear out in the new year. And yeah, I just wish you guys the best. It was really nice to catch up with you again, Brooke.
Yeah, same with you, Jesse. Thank you for...
You can find more cannabis industry reporting at TRICHOMES.com, as well as more great shows like this one. If you're a member of the cannabis community and you have a story you want to share with us, reach out. You can reach the show at highground at TRICHOMES.com. Please take a second to subscribe to the podcast and write a review. It really helps others find the show. You can also join the discussion with industry insiders and get your voice heard by joining the community at trichomes.com and following us on all social media. The show is produced by David Fortin. I'm Jesse Betend, and thank you for listening.